This is a proof of concept of the Shopify fulfillment order API. Basically, the new way that Shopify is doing this, instead of creating the fulfillment directly, there's now an extra layer where we need to pull the fulfillment order information first before we can create the actual fulfillment. So in this test, we have an export, and we'll preview that. So here we can see one sales order with the e-tail order line ID. So that's the ID of the line item in Shopify. And then we have the e-tail order ID, which is just the internal ID of the order in Shopify. So we have that information, so we'll close that here. Oh, by the way, we're grouping this. You can see rows here as a result of the grouping, because if you have multiple line items, then that will appear as a second object in this rows array. And then what we're doing next is a transformation. So given that we have a grouping where we have the line items appearing flat in the JSON, so what we're doing is basically getting the body fields and then creating an items array so it's easier to use when we do our mappings. Okay, so let's close that. So next is we have our lookup. So the lookup step looks for, so I'm using the REST API view instead of the pre-built Shopify adapter. So with the REST API, I'm calling the order slash and then the specific order ID coming from the previous step, and then slash fulfillment orders to get the fulfillment orders array from Shopify, because we're gonna need the fulfillment order ID and line IDs from that array. So if I preview this, I have actually two records here, so let me copy this. And then let's go here. So what you'll notice here, there are actually two fulfillment orders. So you can see that here. The first one is actually closed, since this was an item that was originally removed from the order. So what we're concerned about really is this one here, because this one is the open item. So you can see here the status open. And then within this fulfillment order, the relevant fields are the ID, because this is the fulfillment order ID. And then the line items, we have the line item ID. This is the original e-tail order line ID. So we'll utilize this to find the matching line item, since we have this ID coming from NetSuite, which originally came from Shopify. And then in the fulfillment order API, what we need to provide is this ID. So we're going to use this to match and then return this value. Okay, so this is what it looks like then. And then let's go back. So I'm going to close this. So once we get the fulfillment orders JSON, we don't really need all of these information. So what we're going to do is do another transformation just to reduce that to what we actually need, which is we need this ID, and then we're gonna need the line item, this ID. The line item's ID is the fulfillment order line item ID, plus the line item ID, which is the original retail order line ID, and we can get the quantity as well. Now this preview actually has only the first object in the array that was returned when we did the lookup for the fulfillment orders. So this is the closed fulfillment orders. If I preview that, this is what I'm gonna get. But just to test, to see the open one, you can actually just copy that. So here I still have it. So this record right here, this is the open one. So I can just copy that. And then paste it there. And then it's gonna load the other one. Now, when the flow runs, it's going to show both response objects, but in this case, like just in the preview, it's only going to show one. So just be aware of that. If you need to have it evaluate through the transformation, you can just basically copy and paste here, just like what I did. Okay, so I'm going to close that. And then here we have the result mapping. So when we do our lookup, whatever data we pull from the fulfillment order lookup, it's going to go into this data field or variable, and then we're going to basically transfer it over here. So it's going to go into an array. Now, same thing here with the input. You're going to see that there's only one response data object in here. So if you want to be able to see both of them, you basically just copy and paste it as well. So I've copied that previously, so let me just copy that again. So I'm going to paste that here. So now we have two of those response objects. So when I preview that, so what you're going to see are the original fields, which is this part. This is coming from the export. And then the response data, let me move this a little bit so we have more space. So here we're going to see fulfillment order is this. It's basically an array. Needs to be an array because there might be multiple fulfillment order objects when we do our lookup. Like in this case, we have two, right? So the first one is the status closed, and then the second one is the status open. And then we basically just have the line ID, the quantity, and e-tail line ID. So I'm just leaving the relevant fields here since we don't need all those fields to be appearing. Alright, so now I'm gonna get out of that. So that's the result mapping coming from our lookup. Basically the data here, and then the data pulled from this lookup is going to be aggregated, and it's going to make it to this last step. So this last step is where we create the fulfillment. So I'm going to go to import, and again I'm doing the REST API form view, doing a post. So this is just a creation of a fulfillment, and then we're the relative URI is fulfillments.json. Take note, this is 2022 July. This API is available from July, but I think it's not available anymore in the April version. So either July or October or the January 2023 this will work with. So it's fulfillments.json, and this is defined in the Shopify API, which is here. And you can switch the version here too. But in this case, we're doing the July 22. And then this is how it should look like. So we got the fulfillment.message, notify customer, tracking info. And then this is the, I guess the important part is where we have the fulfillment order line items. So we have the fulfillment order ID and then the specific IDs of the line items coming from the fulfillment order object. And this is different from the original e-tail order line ID. So we need to return this based on when we do the lookup by the e-tail order line ID. So I'm basically going to build this with the export body using this format and using handlebar expressions to retrieve the values. So we're going to go into that next. So here, so we have this, this URI here. This is this part right here. So we're calling this endpoint essentially the /fulfillments.json, and this is what the export body should look like. This is in Node.js though, but how we're going to build this is basically the same structure but in JSON format. So let's go here. This is our HTTP request body. So we're essentially copying the way it's defined in the API. I think I might still have an example of that here. Okay, so this is what it looks like in JSON format. So this is the equivalent of this, but in JSON. But of course, these are all hard-coded values, so we need to be able to generate the order fulfillment order ID dynamically, plus this, the line item ID, and then the quantity. When the order has, let's say, multiple line items in Shopify, but in NetSuite you're only fulfilling some of those line items, then you need to be able to define only which items you want to fulfill. Although in this case, in our example, there's only one line item in Shopify and there's only one line item in NetSuite. But we're going to create the provisions in order to handle that dynamically too, like if there are differences in the line item count or in the line items that we're fulfilling. So I'm going to use this format and then insert handlebars for this part and this part in order to generate these numbers automatically. So, and this is that part here. So we basically have the underlying JSON structure, and tracking info is hard-coded, but when it comes to the order ID, we have this formula that basically this one looks for the e-tail line ID. The items line ID. So this items array here originated from NetSuite, so this is the item that we want to fulfill. And then we need to utilize this line ID, which is this part right here, and find that matching line ID from the fulfillment order JSON, or the response from the lookup, in order to find the matching e-tail line ID, but then return the actual line ID. Now this part, I'm gonna copy because just like in the previous steps, the preview only returns one of the lookup values. So, or the lookup values referring to when we do the lookup, we're looking for the fulfillment orders. And if you remember, and in our case we saw one fulfillment order that was closed and one that was open. So this one just returns the first object, which was closed. So we need to insert, just copy manually in here the open one, the second object, just for the purpose of being able to visualize this. So let me see if I was able to copy that part. Yeah, it's this part right here. So copy that and then paste that here. So if we do a preview of this, basically what it's doing is it's getting the line ID and then checking, it's going into the fulfillment order and line items. So that's fulfillment order and line items. So going through this array, which has two objects, and within each object in the array, it goes into another level of an array in the line items. And then it looks for this e-tail line ID, which matches this one here. In this case, it doesn't match because it's in the second one. So 4754, so it looks for this match, but then it returns this one. So it matches with this, that part, but returns, this one returns the fulfillment order ID, which is this one, that matches this one and returns this. So that's because in the API definition, not that, it requires this fulfillment order ID and then the line level. So the one we were looking at is this one. So returning that there, and then the next step is the line level. So for the line level, we're basically doing a similar search, matching the e-tail line ID, but this time we're returning this specific line ID from the fulfillment order. So that's this part right here. Right, and then we're returning the quantity. Oh, in this case, I wasn't able to update it. This is hard coded to 1. What we want to return here is this one. So we went into an each function to go through the array. So each record.item, so each record.items, and we want to return this quantity. So let me do that here. We want to return quantity, and then do that again here in this part. So the difference here is we have this record.items if at last. So if it's the last object in the array, then we don't want to return a comma at the end, which is this part. But if there are multiple line items, each of the line items would have a comma, so that's this part right here. So that's the else part if it's not the last line. Alright, so I think that's it. So preview that, and it's going to return that quantity of 1. Right, so kind of glossed over this whole each function. You should be able to pick that apart yourself. You can use your handlebar tester to do some, this is like an example of that. If you go to your developer playground handlebars, you can paste your sample JSON here so you can figure out how the each handlebar works. Okay, so we'll save this. Okay, Now, I haven't run this. I wanted to show first the configuration. I'm not even sure if this is going to work yet, so we're going to test it. So what I'll do is enable this. Oh, reach the maximum number of flows. So let me disable some flows first. Let me disable this one. And this one. Alright, so we'll go to Shopify fulfillment order, enable this. Okay, and then I'm gonna enable the debug on my Shopify connection. And okay, I'll close that first. Let's go back there. So I resized it, so I'm gonna reopen it. Okay, just so the view will display the whole thing. So I'm gonna clear this, and then I will run the flow. Let's see how it does. Okay, so it's running. Okay, so I was able to get one record from NetSuite and then get the fulfillment order. Okay, and this actually aired out. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Let's see how that looks like. Just gonna download this and open the thing in Notepad so it's easier to see. So let's see what it did. So this is the lookup step, so it's essentially let me copy that. So what it's doing is getting the ETL order line ID, oh sorry, not line ID, ETL order ID, getting the fulfillment orders objects, doing a get call. And then the response was this. Okay, so in the response we can see that it returned the fulfillment orders. And this is encoded though, so it's kind of hard to read, but it's essentially giving us the status closed. And then where's the other one? Can't see it. Status. Okay, here, this one is the open one. And then what did we do next? Okay, so this is another request. So this is where we sent the call to create the fulfillment. So let's see how that looks like. Okay, so we called this fulfillments.json, doing a post, and then this is what we sent in there. This is also encoded. Let me see if this is correct though. Let's try to clean this up. File, new, and then let's remove the encoding, the escaped quotes. And then just replace that with a regular double quote. Okay. And then let's load that here. Okay, so the way we sent it, fulfillment, message, notify customer, tracking info, number, and then line items by fulfillment order. So we got the fulfillment order ID. Got the ID and the quantity. Okay, so this looks good based on at least the data structure. Now I'm not sure why Shopify didn't like that. Maybe this data type is wrong. Let's compare that. So from the API, well, this one is just a number. Oh, this one's a number and a number, but I sent it as a string. So maybe that's what's wrong, because these two are strings. I don't know if that would matter much though. So let's see. What did it say? So this is the response from Shopify when we sent this. Cloudflare didn't say anything in the response body. Huh. I don't really see any details as to why, like, what the reason is. Let me click into that error. Not acceptable. Okay, this is the request that we sent. I think it might be this and this. So maybe let's modify that a little bit. Okay, let's try that again. So I'm going to modify the export body. No, not that. So we're gonna remove the quotes, that and that and that. Okay, and then on the fulfillment order ID as well. Okay, and save that. Save and close. And then we can just retry this, since it's basically the export body, or that's the equivalent of a mapping. Since we just changed that, we can just retry this error. So I'll just clear this out and then retry this. Okay. Did it error out again? Let's see how it's sent this time. So this time, fulfillment order ID is not a string, and then the line ID is not a string as well. Retries. Oh, it's still errored out. So this time, it did send it as that. Okay, so I'm not really sure what this is, although this is really purpose of at least this first part of the video is to be able to go through the steps of how to pull the data from NetSuite, get it transformed, do the fulfillment order lookup, and then do the results mapping, the additional transformation there, and then building the request body. There might be some adjustments needed here in order to complete the creation of this fulfillment. So maybe add this as a continuation of this video. Okay, so we're continuing the recording. I've since made some changes, and fulfillment was created successfully. So the first change I attempted, what I noticed was I entered this admin slash API and the version, but then I already had it in here. So what I had done is basically just remove this part. So if I go back there to my import, I removed it here. And then I retried it again, and this time I got another error. It said something about the quantity isn't a number. So what I noticed is I made a mistake here. I just entered QTY here, just out of habit, but in the API this should actually be the whole word quantity. So I updated that as well. So in my template, that's now quantity here and here. And after retrying that again, it was successful. And let's take a look at the log. So this is what I had sent. So this is what it looks like now. Let's clean that up so that we can see it. Let's put it in there. Slash double quote. Replace all. Okay, so that's clean. Let's paste it in here. So this is what it looks like now. Oh, I also added these two, but I don't think this is really relevant, but just in case you need to enter a custom URL, like a link to view the tracking number and a custom company or shipping carrier, you can use that. But that's just an addition based on the definition here, where it also includes that. So I literally just copied and pasted that. But I don't think that's important, but might be good to know. So essentially what has changed is this quantity here, and this part right here. So you can see here /admin/API and the version. In our original log, what you'll notice is it's being sent there twice. So that was my initial mistake. Now we can take a look at the order in Shopify. If I look at this, I wasn't able to show this earlier, but now this order is fulfilled. So this part is now fulfilled. And if we look at the JSON and look at the fulfillment, it created a fulfillment there. So I think that's it as a proof of concept. That's how you basically, high level, you get your order data from NetSuite with the e-tail order line ID and the e-tail order ID. So essentially this part is the e-tail order ID in Shopify, and then the e-tail order line ID would be under the line items, and that's this number here. And then we basically transform that just to reduce it to the fields that we need, then do a lookup of the fulfillment orders object, do a transformation just to get the relevant fields, do a result mapping to aggregate the lookup data with the original export data, and then the final step is to create the fulfillment, where we have the ID for the fulfillment order and the line items for the fulfillment order and the quantity. All right, that's it. Thanks. Bye.